A study just released a few weeks ago, and it looked at how many people who are obese have fatty liver disease. 75% of people who are obese have fatty liver disease. Okay, we don't hear a huge amount about fatty liver disease. Yeah. We talk about it in our circle a lot, but for people who are not in our circle, fatty liver disease isn't really that well known or understood. I think we know that alcohol can cause fatty liver disease, but we're talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Primary cause is fructose, excess fructose. Yeah.
Dr. Dan.
Hi.
Great for you coming in, mate. I hear we're both doing the same experiment.
We are, yeah. January with no plant-based foods at all. Kind of the opposite of veganuary, really. So yeah.
Carnivore.
Yeah.
We're both doing carnivore. But let's talk about that in a bit. But let's start with somebody that's on a regular, sadly, what we now call a regular English diet.
Yeah.
Or in America they call it SAD.
SAD, yeah.
Standard American diet.
Named, yeah.
SAD diet. So most people are on the standard American diet or the standard English diet. So that's SED, I guess. SED, yeah. Moving into low carb, which you're obviously an expert in with your website. Then we can go, well, what's after low carb? Maybe keto, and look at that journey, and then maybe go to where we're at for this experiment right now, into full-on carnivore, nothing that, we're not eating, are we? Anything that didn't have a face on it or derived from something with a face on it.
Exactly. It never grew in the ground at any point.
Yeah, and we'll explain why we're doing that. So let's go. Let's talk about the problems with the standard English diet at the moment, which is a mixture of all sorts of things, a lot of processed food. They now say half of the food consumed in the UK is now processed food. And the dangers of that. Let's talk about that. Then let's go through that journey of maybe the 3 different diets people could try.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very important to say that what we definitely eat as a kind of standard is not what we're recommended to eat. Okay, even the government guidance doesn't say you should be eating what most people eat. I mean, it's crazy how things have gone even over the last few years. I mean, I think the last time we came and had a conversation like this, we didn't know what COVID was.
Yeah.
Okay, and COVID came, and we saw a rise in home delivery services, things like the Deliveroos and the I don't even know. None of them delivered to my house, and I wouldn't use them anyway. So those have seen an explosion, and it's now even easier than it ever has been to get junk food, processed rubbish, delivered to your door from an app on your phone, and things have got just so much worse. One of the many things that got so much worse as a result of the pandemic. But I mean, so that's not what we're told to eat, but then is what we're told to eat right? I'm pretty sure that that's pretty bad advice for the majority of people. Where on earth that actually came from, evidence-based, yeah, absolutely. And it comes back, it's all political decisions and who's influencing the politics,
100%.
Exactly. So, and these are government guidelines at the end of the day, and governments get money from tax, and who pays the most tax? It's these big food and pharmaceutical companies that pay the tax.
Exactly.
So governments aren't really going to bite the hand that feeds them with regards to this. So,
and everyone's going, a pharmaceutical company, how does that fit into what you've just said? Pharmaceutical companies don't make money unless people are sick.
Absolutely.
So pharmaceutical does very well when people are sick, and people are sick because the food they're eating, and the junk food is the cheapest to produce. That people say, well, all food must be marketed equally. No, farmers don't have the money to promote good eggs and good beef because that's, but the big factories, Mr. Kellogg's and all those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also those guidelines are rubbish, because how can you have one set of guidelines for my growing children, your growing daughter, who have a different dietary requirement, to my dad who's diabetic, to my mum who's got Alzheimer's, to us in the middle sort of bracket, mind you, you're a lot younger than me. How can you have one set of guidelines? We're all different.
Absolutely. And I think this is the fundamental issue I have with the guidelines is for people with weight loss. That's my interest, is obesity, really. And so why is the whole bottom level of that food pyramid carbohydrates? Carbohydrates break down into glucose, which triggers your pancreas to produce insulin, which keeps your body in fat storage mode. How can that be a good idea for somebody who is trying to lose weight? And I always say that it's like trying to push, doing a calorie restricted diet in that way and being high carb is like trying to push the accelerator pedal and the brake pedal at the same time.
What a lovely analogy.
It's not good for your car and it's not good for you.
Yeah,
so,
love that.
Yeah.
And we had the brilliant Professor Ben Bickman on the other day, and Ben says, you can put fat cells in a Petri dish and put calories in, energy, and nothing happens to the fat cell. Nothing happens to the fat cell till you put some insulin in the dish. Wow! And then watch that fat cell grow. So as long as we can look at a dietary plan that minimises the amount of insulin we've got in the body, then we can get into fat burning mode.
Yeah.
And as we always say, people go, I want to lose weight. And as you and I say, can't lose weight, got to burn body fat.
Absolutely.
So let's add one more thing then to steer this conversation. We are talking to somebody that wants to lose weight.
Yeah.
We're not talking to somebody that's already lean, athletic, whatever. We're going to take you through some steps to lose weight, through looking at maybe low carb, as we said, ketogenic, what the difference between those mean, into potentially carnivore and maybe some fasting.
So I think the first thing we've got to do is reject the common wisdom that we have, okay?
Yeah.
And the common wisdom that we have is that eat less, move more is how you lose weight, okay? And it's called the energy balance model.
Yeah.
And it is the central theme prevailing in anywhere in the world that has moved on from the energy balance model. And it's lovely and simple, isn't it? Of course, it's really, really simple. It just says you need to burn more calories than you consume and you'll lose weight, okay? And the flip side of that is, well, the reason we gain weight is because we eat more calories than we're burning. So it all makes like a really simple, logical sense, doesn't it, okay?
Yeah.
How can it possibly be wrong? Because it doesn't work.
That's kind of a rhetorical question.
It doesn't work, does it? Okay, so I mean, like,
sorry to interrupt you. I can't remember the gentleman's name. I was at Low Carb USA conference literally last week in Florida, and somebody got up and said, "Calories is energy. Yeah, energy doesn't weigh anything." And that got me thinking. That's a good point. We're treating calories as if they weigh something. The calorie itself doesn't weigh anything. And he said, where people have gone wrong, he said, because protein and carbohydrates, and I'm getting too deep right now, pull me back right in a second, but I love this analogy. He said, but because carbohydrates and protein are 4 calories per gram, and because fat is 9 calories a gram, the actual mass you eat, because it's about mass, not calories, eating fat is less. So it's 180 degrees opposite to what everybody's been thinking. But fat weighs more, it's got more calories in. No, you get more calories per gram, and it is about mass, because the way we lose weight is we breathe out the gram weight that we take in.
And heat, of course.
And heat.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is too techy. Forget that.
Yeah. So it's interesting, isn't it? So why do we think this? I mean, it's a simple solution to the human problem, okay? And on the face of it, it seems so easy. So, public health organisations, it's really nice. I mean, ultimately, we've had careers where we do some sales. I think as doctors, we have to sell our ideas and treatments and stuff to patients. And the simpler you can explain things, the easier it is, okay? So, simple message, eat less, move more. Gosh, it's public. It's a marketer's dream, really, isn't it, in terms of a message? Yeah. If only it worked. But
and the marketer's dream, like Weight Watchers, Slimming World, if they work, they go out of business.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you did go for your 10 weeks and you lost weight, you're not going back again. Funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then they go, it's your fault. You haven't been counting your calories properly.
Absolutely. But the common experience is that these things don't work.
Agreed.
Okay? We do have some rare freaks of nature that do seem to be able to make calorie restriction work. Okay, they are there. But there's in my research, there's kind of 4 areas that it falls down. Okay, so the body responds to a calorie restriction, it responds by decreasing your breathing rate, decreasing your heart rate, decreasing your energy out. Okay, so we sleep more, we're colder, and just generally we expend less energy. In fact, we resist when we go the other way. Actually, people have been put into laboratories and overfed. The body doesn't want to gain weight. You heat up, you become more active. So we resist changes in weight through calorie restriction or calorie excess. If you simply ignore the macronutrients, you go up. Okay, but hang on a second. You go, right. This is what we want to happen when we're on a calorie restricted diet. We want to go on that calorie restricted diet. You eat less, you move more, you get to your ideal weight, and then eventually your body just gets used to it. But it doesn't get used to it, okay? Because they've got studies to look at this. They've taken a group of people who have a normal weight, okay? So take a standard weight like 90 kilograms or something. Then they find a group of people who have just lost 10% of their body weight, started out 100 kilograms, just managed to get to 90 kilograms. What's the energy expenditure of the two groups? Well, the group they're the same weight, all 90 kilograms, but the people who've just lost that weight are much more likely to have lower metabolisms than the people who have always been at that weight, who've never lost any weight to get to that weight, okay? They then went and found a further group at a year later. As you can probably imagine, that group was much, much smaller. I think they found like 3 or 4 people, okay? Now, if our bodies ever got used to it, you would expect those people to be at the same as the people who had never lost any weight. Yep. But they weren't, okay? They were the same as the people who had lost the weight. So what this tells me is, you've lost the weight through calorie restriction, but you haven't fixed the underlying problem that caused you to gain the weight in the first place.
Agreed.
Okay? So the second thing is, we get hungry, okay? We get hungry when we calorie restrict, okay? And hormones drive our hunger. We know there's a number of different hormones in the human body that cause hunger. Ghrelin is probably one of my favourite ones. I just like the word. Produced by the stomach.
Because I call him the gremlin.
So produced by the stomach in response to eating, and therefore the levels drop after a meal, and then they go up in the hours following a meal, and you get hungry again. Very, very normal. Okay.
Survival hormone.
Absolutely.
We do need to eat, don't we? At some point we have to eat.
Very important.
That's why we're the hormone that goes eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it thinks correctly or incorrectly that you're hungry.
We are simply a system of hormones, and all a hormone is something that transmits a message from one place, a gland where that hormone is produced, to another place in the body, sometimes all over the body. Okay. The only other way our bodies communicate is via the nervous system, and that's really all we are, is a collection of organs and hormones and nerves, really. So but we've got a number of hormones that control hunger, and so what happens when you put somebody on a calorie restricted diet? Well, thankfully, a group of Australian researchers did this. 10 weeks later, I think it was 9 weeks later, those people who are on a calorie restricted diet, they had higher hormone levels of their hunger hormones. So we are actually more hungry when we're on a calorie restricted diet. They followed them up from a year, for a whole year. Now, as I said before, if your body ever gets used to this, we would expect that our hunger hormones are back to normal after this time, but they're not. They're still raised, okay? So even if you're one of the rare people, and they are rare, about 1 in every 150 people, I think it is, that starts a calorie restricted diet ever is successful, you're still tireder, colder, more fatigued, sleeping more, and hungrier because you haven't fixed the problem. So when you said, what's the first step, you've got to learn to reject the energy balance model, okay? Because if you're still thinking about calories all the time, it's not that I think calories don't exist, it's not that I think they are completely without use.
In fact, we'll probably talk about that, won't we, towards the end, because there is a point later on when we get down these different ways of losing weight that you then might want to look at calories when you plateau.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, and what's fueling it even worse now, every restaurant in the UK has to now put the amount of calories on, and they're misleading people yet again. And we'll explain why we think that's misleading. So we're getting worse, not better. And also, you know, you just said then maybe 1 out of 150 people maybe can do it with calorie restriction. But it's a miserable life because you're always hungry. Yeah. Always hungry. And Tim Noakes said to me once, he said, I meet somebody fat. He said, I know what's going on. He said, they're fueled by hunger. Yeah. They're always hungry. And then somebody else said to me the other day that those programs like the Biggest Loser, and they're like weight loss programs on TV, you know, who can lose the most, and they take people morbidly obese and they put them on calorie restriction. It's funny, you never see a reunion party.
No,
because they all go back again.
Absolutely. And yeah, you talk about hunger. I mean, that's what defined my life. And so for people who have never encountered me before, I used to be obese. Back in 2016, I lost about 30 kilograms in just over 6 months using a ketogenic diet. We'll talk about those later. To reverse my own obesity. So I have that experience of what it means. Dan,
what we'll do right now, I'll get the producer, we'll put over some photographs of you and I in the same year, because we were both obese.
Yeah, absolutely. And you won't find many photos of me from back then, because I didn't like being on camera, Did not like at all. I was always the guy with the camera, not being behind the camera. So you will find some photos, but they'll be rare. But I was pretty obese back then, and felt ashamed really, because I'm here being a doctor, and it's pretty clear I haven't sorted my own health issues out. But I didn't know how, because I was still following calories in, calories out, and it doesn't work. The very worst thing, that I think about the calorie restriction diet is if you fail, the calorie restrictive mantra says it's your fault. Yeah. It's your fault. You didn't cut the calories enough,
Or you didn't move enough.
You didn't exercise hard enough. It's your fault. Yeah. And who pushes this message? It's the food companies that sponsor big sporting events. And they've spent billions drumming it into our psychology that you can eat whatever you want as long as you exercise enough. And if you get fat, it is your fault.
Yeah, Gary Lineker's not having any effect of those Walker crisps, is he? No. Is he really sitting there and having 20 packs a night? I wouldn't have think. No. He's probably never had a Walker's crisp in his life.
No, absolutely. So, and maybe if he's doing the amount of exercise he was when he was a professional footballer, he could probably tolerate it. But it's amazing how many people end up there at the end of their professional sporting lives as diabetic.
So I think what we've done so far, we've just said calorie restriction is not the way. Yeah. So let's start talking about the 3 or 4 different approaches. Yeah. And that's what I love about you. Even though your company's carbdodging.com and that's the bit but we also know there's some other versions of that. So let's start with the carb dodging and then move on.
Yeah. So the reason it's carb dodging is because that just basically encompasses a range of different options people have when they decide they want to go and lose weight. All reverse type 2 diabetes, it's the same paradigm. It's all part of the same disease process that is going on, okay? Yeah. And so carb dodging incorporates all of those different things, okay? Mm-hmm. So if you've moved away from the energy balance model, calories in, calories out, what do you do? Well, the other leading theory is called the carbohydrate insulin model, which basically fundamentally sits around the idea that if you consume carbohydrates, eventually they get broken down into glucose, which is only partially true because you can have fructose as well. That's a problem as well. So carbohydrates get broken down into glucose. That puts your blood glucose levels up, and then that signals to your pancreas in order to respond, to bring those levels down. And very importantly, that insulin has an effect on all sorts of different tissues in the body, but crucially it has the effect on our fat cells. It has 2 effects on our fat cells. It allows our fat cells to take that blood glucose up, in which case a fat cell does what a fat cell is supposed to do, which is make fat from glucose. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we've got extra, that's what it does. But also, it makes no sense to be burning fat. Fat is a survival thing. We want to be fat historically, evolutionarily. That's not a word. From an evolutionary perspective, we want to be fat. Fat equals survival. Yeah. We didn't have food security like we do to a certain extent in the modern world, and that's a big topic. We don't necessarily have food security, even here in the UK these days, but we don't. So fat is precious to the human body, okay? And if you're taking in carbohydrates, if you've got glucose levels that are elevated, why on earth would you be starting to access those fat stores? And insulin is a key signaling molecule to say, hang on a second, we can burn glucose at the moment, we don't need to be burning fat, okay? So there are a number of obvious issues with this, and the fact is that that people can bring examples in of somebody they know, the teenager who can sit and eat bowl of pasta after bowl of pasta and never gains weight.
Jet lag effect.
Yeah, potentially. But also there's plenty of populations in the world who have had high carbohydrate diets and stuff. There are ways of explaining that. The key thing is that it's not just glucose that causes problems. Fructose is a really, really bad thing. Okay, fructose we find it from fruit. Obviously, everybody knows the fruit sugar, honey. Certain vegetables also have fructose in them. Very minor in the grand scheme of things. Even though we've been doctoring fruit and vegetables for years to make them sweeter, you can go and buy super sweet corn, and the carrots are super sweet carrots, and everything's sweeter than it used to be because we've been doctoring it both from like GM crops, but also humans have been messing around selectively breeding things for years. Most of the fruits we have these days just didn't really exist ever before. But it's sugar, table sugar, sucrose, or also increasingly high fructose corn syrup, which is even higher in fructose. But all sucrose is, table sugar, is a molecule of glucose and a molecule of fructose. And we now know that fructose is terrible for us, okay? Especially if we drink it. We give ourselves a huge dose of it in one go. Now, fructose can't be metabolized by the whole body. It can only really be metabolized by the liver, mainly by the liver.
Agreed.
In which case it creates glycogen, our short-term energy store. But let's face it, if we're snacking all the time, those glycogen stores are going to be full anyway. So what does it do? It turns it into fat, okay? And the liver is great. It makes new things. My favorite organ. I have a favorite organ. I'm that guy, okay? The liver is my favorite organ because it's so cool. It makes new things from other things, okay? And so what it does is it converts fructose into fat. Now, a certain amount of that fat gets exported out of the liver and transported around the body. Some of that gets trapped around your middle and causes that intra-abdominal or visceral fat that we know is so unhealthy for us. But actually, if you're drinking loads of sugary drinks, that export system of the liver gets completely overwhelmed, and we get fat trapped in our livers. Okay? And fat trapped in your livers is really bad. The liver should not have any significant amount of fat within it. And it goes, I don't want to be fat, okay? And the only response it has is to say, hang on a second, this insulin's causing problems. So I'm going to stop listening to the effect of insulin. Okay? And so the liver becomes insulin resistant. Okay? And so that's where the problems really, really start. Okay? Is when the liver becomes fat. And we know there's a study just released a few weeks ago. And it looked at how many people who are obese have fatty liver disease. 75% of people who are obese have fatty liver disease, okay? We don't hear a huge amount about fatty liver disease. We talk about it in our circle a lot, but for people who are not in our circle, fatty liver disease isn't really that well known or understood. I think we know that alcohol can cause fatty liver disease, but we're talking about non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Primary cause is fructose, excess fructose, usually from sugar. You don't get that from fruit. It's just too small amounts in fruit to be able to cause that problem.
Can I just, again, I think it's very plain English anyway, but just quickly summarise that in about 30 seconds. Historically, over the 2 million years we've been on the planet, so virtually, it's only changed in the last couple of 100 years. The only time we would have had a high amount of fructose, probably in the autumn, certainly in the UK. Fruits on the trees, we have it, and it might have been on purpose for, I don't know, survival or nature or God or whatever, but the fruit's there in the winter, so we gorge on the fruit. It turns the fructose into body fat, maybe to get through the winter.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now we're not having because of the high corn fructose syrup and all the things in packaged foods, and we're getting way more fructose than we can cope with.
Yeah.
And I think the reason you came on to that, I think you were about to talk about the Asian paradox, where how come they could have glucose or food like the pasta, the rice and things, and the bread that turns into glucose for years and years and years and never get fat. But all of a sudden now they've added the Western diet, which is full of fructose, the two together, nightmare.
Bang on. Absolutely. Okay. And, this is the thing is, because it's not glucose that causes the problem. It's not your starchy carbohydrates that cause the problem. And that's why your teenager can sit and eat loads and loads of pasta. Well, they haven't developed insulin resistance at that point, okay?
Yeah.
It's the addition of the sugar into an already stressed metabolism that starts to cause those problems. And that's the simplest way I think I can explain it here, really, okay? Glucose is not a problem until it becomes a problem, okay? And then it's a problem, okay? So glucose, and this is, eventually this leads on to the fact that we can no longer, we become so insulin resistant that the glucose builds up in our bloodstream, and that's when we become diabetic. And so that has a toxic effect.
And that's down the road though, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're insulin resistant sometimes 10, 20, 30 years before that. Like my dad, I was only diagnosed with diabetes type 2 in his mid-70s. Yeah. But prior to that, he had gout, sign that you've got insulin resistance. Always had hypertension. In fact, Ben Bickman said, show me anybody with hypertension, it's somebody that's got insulin resistance that's not been yet diagnosed. Yeah. And then my dad had erectile dysfunction, another sign of insulin resistance. And realistically, if somebody's got a bit of a belly or hypertension, high blood pressure, they to some degree are insulin resistant, aren't they already?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, and even in people who are overweight and haven't hit the obese category yet, still 70% of people have fatty liver disease, okay? And you're absolutely right. High blood pressure. Why do we get high blood pressure? Because insulin acts on the kidneys and causes them to retain fluid, okay? Yeah. What's one of the things that happens when we cut the carbohydrates? People's blood pressure drops, which is why I always tell people, if you're on blood pressure medication, you need to be doing this like with your doctor and taking regular blood pressure medications. People's blood pressure just drops like a stone. Honestly, it doesn't take long to make an improvement, okay? This is not a long-term strategy. People get rapid results when they say, I'm going to stop restricting calories and I'm going to start restricting carbohydrates, okay? And it is rapid. The water, the kidneys, the effect of that fluid, that retention, reverses over a course of 2 or 3 days.
I know,
people look vastly different. They look slimmer, less bloated, and they feel different. And people will say, oh yeah, but that's just water weight. Well, yeah, that's what happens first, okay? Water weight is what happens first, okay? You can't tell me that the 30 kilograms that I lost back in 2016 is all water weight, okay? There was definitely some fat in there as well. So, yeah, but that's what, oh no, carb losses, when you cut carbs, it's just water weight. No, it is for the first couple of days. And like, it's not uncommon for people to lose like 3 kilograms, 6-7 pounds in the first few days.
Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back one step in a second. So, although all food breaks down, doesn't it, into the 3 macronutrients and some micronutrients, but basically 99% of your food inside the human body, doesn't matter whether it's a loaf of bread, an apple, a steak, an egg, doesn't matter what it is, I just want to make this plain English, 99% of that food will break down inside the body to either carbohydrates, which is always sugar, protein, or fat. Protein is in almost every food that we eat because that's the building blocks, that's how we regenerate our skin and everything. And then your real 2 energy sources are either carbohydrates or fat. Mainly, a little bit with protein, but forget that for a second. When you eat sugar, carbohydrates, we have got about 60,000 miles of blood vessels going around our body. Or is it 6,000? It's irrelevant.
It's a long way.
It's a long way. Go around the earth twice, so maybe it's 60,000. But we've got 60,000 capillaries, blood vessels, arteries, veins, pumping this blood around. And how much sugar will that suspend for a healthy adult? And let's talk teaspoons. So right now, how much sugar is circulating in your bloodstream and mine?
It's crazy, isn't it? It's not a lot.
And the answer is 1.
Yeah.
1.5 teaspoons in your blood,
yeah.
you're diabetic.
Yeah.
3, you probably die immediately.
Yeah.
So we have that Subway, and I always pick on Subway because it's an easy one to think about. 12 inches of bread, 150 grams, turns into 15 teaspoons of sugar very quickly in the body. But if the body can only suspend 1, it's got to get rid of that 14 quickly, otherwise you die. Then insulin comes up, grabs it. Now we've got high insulin. And because, like you said earlier, it's a fat storage hormone, while you're storing it, you cannot burn it.
Yeah.
If you can't burn it, no such thing as losing weight. You've got to burn body fat. So if insulin's up, you can never lose weight.
No, absolutely. It makes it extremely difficult, doesn't it? Okay.
So let's help somebody then.
People do lose weight, okay?
Yeah.
But like on a calorie restricted diet, 30%, 35% is muscle mass. Okay, we don't want to be losing muscle mass.
Yeah, exactly.
Muscle mass is really, really important. You might not think it's that important at this point in your life, but I tell you what, when you get to 80 or 90 and you can't get out of a chair because you haven't got muscle mass, that's going to have a significant impact on your quality of life. Lean muscle tissue is what we should be aiming to preserve at all stages of our life. Okay?
In all of these diets.
Yeah.
So as you're the carb dodger, carbdodging.com, and we've just identified that it's the carbs that put up insulin.
Yeah.
And this whole program's about losing weight. And you can't lose weight while insulin's up. What are we dodging so we don't put insulin up and we can burn body fat?
So we've got a spectrum of options from here, okay? And the route we choose isn't actually that straightforward, okay? So you can just go on what we call a standard low carbohydrate diet. The definition of which is a little bit vague. There's no kind of internationally kind of agreed definition of a low carbohydrate diet. Some people say it's 150 grams of carbohydrates. Some people say it's 100 grams of carbohydrates per day.
Yeah.
And others, a lot of the scientific studies in this area use 130 grams of carbohydrates as a benchmark a day.
But it's just lower carbs than what the traditional sad American diet or the sad English diet.
Or even what we're recommended to eat via what we call here the Eat Well plate. Okay, so we're reducing it. And the way we generally go about that is reducing the classic bread, rice and pasta, your classic starchy carbohydrates, significantly limiting those vegetables that grow below the ground, your tuberous vegetables like potatoes. Okay, you can probably still have, at the top end of that range, you can probably still have a small amount of potatoes in there, indeed like sweet potatoes, for example. Loads of other nutrients in there, so maybe you could have a little bit of moderation in there. Yeah. But generally, carbohydrates come from plant food. Okay, so the more strict you are on a low carbohydrate diet, the less plant food you can eat. Okay, and so within plant foods themselves, there's a significant variety of levels of carbohydrates, and so we have. At that point, you have to teach people, or people have to learn, well, which fruits are higher in carbohydrates. Well, your berries are very low in carbohydrates generally, although we play around with those, don't we? And we have these mutant giant blueberries that are extra sweet, and the same with strawberries and things like that. But that's very, very different from your tropical fruits, your mangoes, your bananas, which are at the much higher end of the carbohydrate spectrum. And if you're eating several bananas a day, you're going to burn through that 150 grams of carbohydrates pretty quickly.
But it's still some people can't visualize numbers. I certainly can't visualize numbers. If you were to cut down to 150, what's the tip? If somebody's having cereals in the morning, they're having sandwiches at lunch, maybe a pizza, what sort of gram weight is the average sort of? Are we talking about half in it, or going down? Your
standard diet is considered to be around 300. Okay, that's what most people will be consuming. So you're going at least half of that. Yeah. But you're not just saying I'm going to eat half a pizza. No. You're saying, right, I don't want the bread. I'm going to go for more volume of lower carbohydrate options. Yeah. And so that's option one. Okay. Now, that's a good option for some people.
And sorry to interrupt one more time. So what you're suggesting then is go and look at your website, look at our website, understand what food. You've got to, first thing you've got to do, because you're not restricting calories, which is boring. Nobody wants to be an accountant when you're cooking, and it doesn't work, and you're hungry. So forget counting calories, it doesn't work. It just funds Weight Watchers and da-da-da-da-da. We're saying don't count, but learn about what your food turns into and cut down your carbohydrate intake.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people want a visual guide, if you go onto my website, carbdodging.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's some free resources, and you can download a printable. You can print it if you want. You can just have it on your iPad or whatever. But it basically shows you all of the different foods, common foods, and the number of carbohydrates in 100 grams. And it's like a traffic light system. Yeah. So it's red, green, amber. And so, you can kind of get an idea of those. So that's a really good place to start. There's other resources as well out there.
Yeah, we've got on our website, we break it down into every food type into what's between 1 and 5 grams per 100, 5 and 10, 10 and 20. So you can really just get going on there.
Absolutely. So some sort of visual guides are really, really helpful.
And we're not talking about cutting calories now, are we? We're just changing at this point what we eat.
Absolutely. And I think for the majority of it, we've moved on from that calorie thinking to, well, let's think about this, okay? 100 years ago, when most people were pretty lean, it's very rare to find obese people. You do hear about them and you're reading sometimes and that, but they were rare. Very rare.
Even in 1966 at the World Cup, we watched on telly about a year ago. They were doing a rerun of the World Cup when we won it. Just to remind all those foreigners out there, we won it once. And it zoomed into the crowd walking into the ground. And I said to my wife, look, not a single fat person. No. I said that because people who follow football. I went, I go down the Villa every Saturday. I'm about the only one going into the stand I go in that isn't overweight. Yeah. How? In 57 years have we gone from slender to fat. The average Brit, what's this in kilograms? The average Brit has put 2.5 stone on in 50 years.
I can well imagine. Yeah, it's not right. But so we're not talking about calories. We're not talking about calories. And most people, we didn't really think about calories then. We didn't have apps on our phones where we could put what we scan, beep, and it comes up with how many calories it is, and you can record your exercise on your smartwatch and it'll give you a predicted weight loss and stuff. We're moving away from that, okay? Yeah. That's not a fun way to live, and it doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, so we're looking at carbohydrate restriction. So that's your moderate low carbohydrate diet. It's a significant improvement. It's a significant improvement over a standard diet. But you've got other options. Okay, surely restricting carbohydrates even more would be better. Yeah. Okay?
Especially the more weight you've got to lose.
Potentially. Yeah. Potentially. I'll talk about some of the reasons why people pick which diet. Yeah. Okay, in a little bit. And I've got a way that I teach people, which is what I recommend to most people. It's a very individual choice. We're all different. We've all got different starting points. We've all got different ways which we approach our lives. And so there is no one size fits all. That's why it's carb dodging, okay? We fit all of those different modalities. We support everyone, whatever journey they want to go on within the low carb spectrum. Yeah. Okay? But yes, if you continue to restrict your carbohydrates, your body can no longer fuel itself for glucose. So it has to go, hang on a second, I need to get that energy from somewhere else. Okay. Now some people talk about this as starvation. It's not starvation, it's flipping a switch in your metabolism. So you start burning what you don't. You can't use glucose anymore, you've got to find something else, okay? Yep. Remember my favourite organ, the liver? Yeah. The liver is particularly good at making something new, and it makes ketones out of fat. And so that's an alternative energy source. Ketones are a great source of fuel. So we upregulate our fat, we've got low insulin levels, so we can start burning fat. All our muscles and everything like that, they can all use fat for fuel now that they're not being required to use glucose because insulin levels are high. And so we've got all this energy from fat, and that's kind of what we're trying to do, isn't it, here? Yeah. But we're doing it so low that we have to produce this secondary energy source, okay? Because that fat can't go into our brains, so we need something to run our brains on. So ketones are a great energy source for our brains.
What we were designed to live off. That's what's in breast milk.
It's one of the, and it's one of the things that it's one of the side benefits of a ketogenic diet is people get a lot of clarity when they go on a ketogenic diet. Yeah. Mental clarity.
You've just flipped into this next camp. Let's be clear. We've just gone standard crap English diet into cutting the carbs, lowering the amount down, maximum 150, but try and get it down as far as you can. Yeah. And now you're proposing
going even further okay, with the ketogenic diet. Okay. Now, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, because who would fund them? There was no studies that directly compare a low carbohydrate, what I talked about first, a moderate low carbohydrate diet, to a ketogenic diet, which is a very low carbohydrate diet. So what's the difference between the two? Well, my experience, personal experience, that of coaching hundreds and thousands of people in this way of living, is that they lose weight faster on a ketogenic diet.
Agreed.
Okay. Yep. Now, faster isn't always better. We all know about the tortoise and the hare, but it can be incredibly psychologically motivating. Yes. Okay, because slow progress is frustrating. Yes. Very frustrating. Yeah. Okay, and so it's psychologically good when people go on a ketogenic diet. They lose that initial water weight. The weight's flying off them. They're getting that mental clarity, and they're feeling good. Yeah. Well, that's like, hang on a second, I'm going to carry on doing this.
And so here we're now going ketogenic. So now we're saying, look, really try and not have your starchy veg. Yeah. Cut all the grains out. So don't have your cereals, don't have your bread, cut your potatoes out. Have some greens maybe, because they're very low grams of carbohydrates in your greens, but predominantly eat things that once had a face on it, or derived from something that had a face on it.
So like I said earlier, carbohydrates come from plant food. The more we carbohydrate restrict, the more we're going towards that kind of meatier end of the spectrum, okay? Yep. Full fat dairy, all that's in there as well, okay? Plenty of nuts have low carbohydrate, are fairly low in carbohydrate as well, so that's all in there. It is a restrictive diet. There's no getting around it. It's a restrictive diet. Now, I used this example in a video I made recently, okay? Because it happened to me in real life. We're buying a new bed at the moment, so we went into the bed shop that's near where myself and Steve live, because we actually live really close to each other. And we looked at this bed and we thought, so look around the showroom, and there's a selection of beds around there, okay? And me and my wife, my daughter's going crazy, jumping off every single thing there. It's quite difficult. But we found this bed that we like. I'm like, oh, that'll look good in our bedroom. Okay, right, cool. What's next? And the woman goes over and she brings over this big book, okay? And it's all the different swatches of all the different fabric options that you can possibly choose for this bed. So you've got leather, you've got like, I don't know my fabrics, softer velvety stuff, like linen-y kind of stuff, and you've got grey, you've got orange, you've got all this kind of stuff, and we're like, what on earth are we going to choose? We bought the blue bed from IKEA, okay? That's what we bought. It's too much choice, isn't there, okay? So it depends. This is the thing, Steve, because it depends, doesn't it, okay? Are you the kind of person that loves that variety? Oh, I spent ages poring over the book and to try and work out what's absolutely perfect. Do you love that variety? Yeah. Or are you happy to go, well, do you know what? It's a lot easier when I go into a supermarket. So I've got a limited palette. Okay, I'm going to buy some peppers. I'm going to buy some cucumber. I'm going to buy some spinach. I'm going to buy some broccoli. I'm going to buy some meat. Okay, bang, done, out. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Or do you want every single option that's available to you that isn't a processed food? Yeah. And that's the difference between a low carbohydrate diet and a ketogenic diet, okay? Yeah.
Now you just stay in the fresh food aisle pretty much. You can get some canned fish as well, of course, but you just avoid all those first aisles, which are anything in a packet, other than some canned fish, and you just go down looking at the natural food.
But yeah, it's a more restrictive palette of options. But for some people, it's a great palette of options. Some lovely stuff in there. Asparagus, you know, looking forward to springtime when we start to get asparagus coming back through in the UK. Yeah. And, you know, there's a great palette of seasonal vegetables within there, and of course meat. You know, and I know we're in this age where meat lovers and people who like to eat meat or choose to eat meat are being demonized, but actually I'm an unapologetic meat eater, okay?
It's what you were designed to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an unapologetic meat eater. Yeah. And so, you know, if people choose vegetarianism of their own free will, then that's entirely of them. As long as somebody's fully informed in making a decision, that's their decision, okay? But that's not for me, okay?
So and do supplement if you are a complete vegetarian.
And I'm completely happy, you know, having a relatively restricted. And so a ketogenic diet is what I generally live on. Okay. I'm quite happy having the restrictive palate for the majority of times because of the benefits it's given me over the last few years since I've been doing it since 2016.
And can I also say, we both live that life, that ketogenic, because we're both not half the size we used to be, but probably around the waist.
Significant reduction, yeah.
And we both live that way, that ketogenic. But it doesn't, I mean, it depends how strict you do. Again, everybody's a bit different, but you and I are the same. We're strict. But if we want a blowout now again, we had a lovely pizza up a mountain together once. We said, look, that was always on the menu. Well, let's have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as long as people aren't, and this is the thing, like as long as people aren't going from like a strict ketogenic diet to all out sugar binges and back.
Yeah.
I'd much rather people pick a pathway in the middle if that's going to be their reality, okay? Because as much as I love the ketogenic diet and I love the effect it's had on me and I love seeing the effect it has on my clients and that, I know it's not for everybody. And I think we can't be, I think this is, you've got so many people who go on a strict ketogenic diet or even strict vegans and they're like, well, everybody must do what I'm doing. Okay, it's not right. Okay, it's not, and you see so many people. They're like they have this experience in their lives. I mean, take diet out of it, but it's like they get all, inspired and everything, and they go out there and it's the best thing ever and stuff. But that's your experience. Okay, that's not the experience of somebody who is actually experienced in helping a wide range of people, okay? And you'd be naive to think that ketogenic diet is the only thing for anybody.
I think what you were just saying then, when I mentioned that we once had a pizza, that was like a one-off, a month, or I don't know what yours is, but mine, I probably might have 2 days a month where I'm out with the family and they want to go to a certain restaurant, and even though I've asked to have steak, they haven't got it, rather than sit there on my own and twiddle my thumbs, once or twice a month I might break my own rules. But you're saying what you don't want to do is to pick either the low carb or now talking ketogenic, or in a minute we're going to talk carnivore. Don't pick one further down this way if it means every other day you keep bouncing backwards and forwards and binging because your body won't know, what the hell am I? Am I a sugar burner? Oh, now you want me to be in ketosis? Well, I can't get there because I've still got sugar. Now you're in ketosis, and then the next day of a pizza, and your body's going, what the hell's going on? And then
absolutely, and your mind's going, what the hell on? Because you've got that disappointment because you've fallen off your diet and you're back down the sugar aisle, and that's psychologically different as well, difficult as well. So, it's not for everybody, but it is powerful. It is very, very powerful. But so is a carnivore diet. And that's the next interesting progression. And it's very, very interesting because back in, was it November last year, I was like, I'm going to do a carnivore month in January. And Steve was like, yes, let's do it, okay?
Sign me up, doctor, sign me up.
Carnivore's been an area of interest. I would say I've been carnivore curious for a long time. And where I think the biggest benefit from carnivore is some people clearly don't get on with certain plant foods, okay, and do much, much better without it. Some people have horrendous autoimmune diseases, which seem to be triggered by plant foods, certain elements within plant foods. And so carnivore is an extreme elimination diet. Like I say, foods, carbohydrates, plant-based, go take that to its complete logical opposite end, and you're basically into zero carb, or if you're still eating some dairy and stuff in there, very, very, very low carb diet, which is for some people.
And can we just clarify what we mean as carnivore is everything you eat. Everything you eat has to be meat or fish or derived from meat or fish. So you can have eggs. You can try that. Some people are, can't cope with eggs, but if you have no intolerances to eggs, add eggs. If you don't have intolerances to cheese, add cheese. Look at your cheese as well, though, because there's something called casein A1, casein A2, and you might be allergic and think you're allergic to all cheeses, but actually it might be casein A1 from cows. So maybe look at the goat cheese, the sheep cheese, the feta, the mozzarella, and so on. But it's got to come from an animal or derived from an animal.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like bad, but it's basically everything that vegans don't eat. We eat. And nothing that vegans eat, we eat. Okay? And, there's different people with, some people only eat, or muscle meat and eggs. And some people will, the major issue for me, and I knew this was going to be an issue, is boredom. Okay, I like meat, I love meat, and I don't want to fall out of love with it. Okay, but that's what happens when you eat anything too often.
I'm rotating it: lamb one day, chicken one day, cow the next day, livers the next day, and a pate, some fish. I just got to make a bit of effort to rotate.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I know it's absolutely great, but I've started to introduce. I was going to do it completely without dairy, and so I have started to introduce some good quality buffalo mozzarella in there, and some halloumi.
I've done that from January the 1st.
Yeah.
So from January the 1st, I thought if I'm going to stick to it, I've got to make it really varied. So I've had the steak with my 4 or 5 eggs, I get some mozzarella, cut it up so it looks like chips.
Yeah.
Bang in a load of butter in the pan, fry them up, and loads of salt on top, occasionally black pepper, but again, black pepper's from a plant. So this shouldn't really be adding the black pepper.
Exactly.
But amazing. And here's the thing, Dan. So, we both lost loads and loads of weight. Mm-hmm. We both tell people to go low carb, which is great. We've already just migrated naturally ourselves to more keto anyway, which we think has additional benefits. But even when I was keto, something in eating my keto diet, and mine is the greens and the meat and the fish and quite a lot of nuts and seeds, something in there was still keeping my blood pressure higher than it should be. So I sit around 135, 140, over 85 to 90 normally, which I know is a little bit more than it should be. 2 days of only eating meat, I'd got it down to lower than I've ever seen it. A week later, I'm at 117 over 74.
Yeah. So this is interesting, isn't it? And so I think it's fascinating, isn't it, really? Okay. And so the next step is then to say, hang on a second, what is it? Okay. So it's an elimination diet. Okay. It's not the worst way because meat's tasty, but actually then it's a case of adding stuff back in. If you don't want to live that way long term, then are you going to just start to add various food groups back in and see what happens to your blood pressure? That's an exciting journey to go on, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm going to keep going till I can see my 6-pack. There better be one in there, otherwise I've wasted months. I'm going to keep going till I can see a little bit of my 6-pack, and I am going to start adding things back in.
Yeah, yeah.
But here's the thing, and this is the ultimate elimination diet. And the reason when you mentioned it, it's like 3 ships aligned at once. I've done a podcast with a lady called Claire Snowden-Darling, who is a phenomenal lady, studies the menopause and things. And she was having all sorts of psoriasis, skin problems a few years ago. And somebody said to her, you've got to go carnivore for a month, find it, and then maybe we'll fix it. And it fixed everything. Yeah. And then she started adding bits back in. She added one day tomatoes back in, bang, psoriasis back all over her skin. So she knew then, and she's going to write a book. My tomatoes were killing me. Yeah. My tomatoes were making me fat. Yeah. My tomatoes were making my menopause absolutely horrific. Yeah. Just one thing. But she identified it. I've got a feeling mine is nuts, because nuts is the thing I need every single day, especially naughty nuts like the peanuts that are just so convenient when I fill the car up with petrol. I've got a feeling when I add things back in, it might be the nuts that was keeping my blood pressure up.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see. This is just like, life's just one long experiment with these kind of things. It's really fun. And I think anybody who kind of goes onto this has got to be willing to experiment, and find out what works for them. But it's going to be really interesting to you go, all right, it only happens with peanuts and cashew nuts, but it doesn't happen with pecan nuts. Yeah, so it's really, really interesting to find out what goes on. And that's, you're finding a really tailor-made plan for your life, aren't you, in this? It's really cool.
And have you heard this, or you might dispute it, or may have heard it already, because you're in the space more than I am. What Claire was saying is that when you eat, we're not talking that you've got an allergy, because everybody knows you've got a nut allergy, or don't know, because it's very severe, but a slight intolerance to something that you don't know you've got. She was saying the research now says, let's say for tomatoes, let's say I am slightly intolerant of peanuts. What happens is when I eat it, first thing that happens, it stresses the body. And because it stresses the body, even to a small way, cortisol comes back up. So one of the reasons maybe I couldn't lose that last stone that I've always wanted to lose is because when cortisol comes back up, it's putting sugar back into the body, which means more insulin. So it might even be just the peanuts that were keeping the last stone, not because of the calorific value, nothing to do with the calorific value whatsoever, but the hormonal response to it, number one. So that's cortisol. But also, apparently, when you have a slight intolerance to something or intolerance, it also puts up adrenaline. So you think you're enjoying the thing that's causing you harm. So now, maybe the reason I love peanuts and I'm addicted to them is because I get an adrenaline rush, but the adrenaline rush is trying to tell me, no, don't have it.
It's really interesting. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? And then people with peanut allergies, we give them adrenaline, interestingly. And so, yeah, look, it's fascinating. And it's an area of research which I think is well worth it, okay? Somebody is intolerant to gluten. Sorry, someone's allergic to gluten.
Yes.
We call them celiac.
We do.
And on the NHS, we prescribe them like celiac bread, celiac pasta, all this kind of stuff. I mean, we naturally, being low carb, you cut all that stuff out. You're naturally on a gluten-free diet. You don't need any of that stuff. But we're quite happy to pay for it on the NHS, all these gluten-free products, okay? Yet, for someone with severe autoimmune disease, they might need joint replacements. They might need lifelong, extremely powerful drugs which require full-time nurses to be on call to monitor those drugs, regular blood tests at their doctors, when the solution for them might be a carnivore diet. Isn't that worth researching?
Isn't it?
Isn't that worth researching? Isn't it worth giving those people that option? Okay, they might not like it. They might be like, I prefer the drugs. Okay, that's their choice. Okay, but what we haven't got now is the research to back it up. But who's going to fund that? Who's going to fund that research? But it's a really exciting thing.
There's a surgeon in the States I spoke to at this conference who does knee surgery, amongst other things. And somebody will come in and he'll have a good look, and occasionally he'll operate straight away because he goes, yeah, it's completely shot. But he says, like 9 times out of 10, he says to the patient, what do you eat? And he discusses what they eat. He says, right, I will do your knee, but I want you to go and go carnivore 3 months first. Because if I do your knee now anyway, the chances of it healing and being successful are lower. But I want you to go 3 months carnivore first. He said, I'm doing myself out of money because they make a load of money, these surgeons in America. So I'm doing myself out of money, but I know about 1/3 of the people that go away never come back for the surgery because, you know, it just fixes.
Yeah, absolutely. When this is the well-known thing within knee surgeons and hip surgeons is 1 in 10 people who have knee surgery don't have a good outcome. The pain is worse than before. The problem is you don't know who they're going to be before you do the surgery. And they always say that a mark of a good surgeon is knowing when not to operate. Okay, and that's very difficult when you make a lot of money out of it, isn't it? So another thought between the model we have in the UK and the model over there. And so that's interesting. But we'll talk about. I mean, one thing I didn't talk about is some of the additional advantages of a ketogenic diet over a low carbohydrate diet. I talked about mental clarity, but there are a few others. First of all, ketones themselves, we think they directly inhibit hunger. Remember ghrelin that I talked about earlier? Ghrelin levels are known to be lower in people who are on moderate low carbohydrate diets, okay? So we're less hungry when we're on low carbohydrate diets. But ketones themselves are thought to directly inhibit hunger. Another area of research we need to know is why they are directly inhibiting hunger.
Well, isn't that black and white? Isn't it the fact that you're not hungry because you're turning your body fat back into energy, and because you've got ketones circulating and not insulin, you can readily turn that body fat back into energy. So why would you be hungry?
I'm talking about just the biological mechanism, what sensor it reacts to and stuff. So so it'd be nice to kind of have that as from the scientific geek, because the more evidence we can get that this is how our bodies work, the better, really. So but the other thing is ketones are anti-inflammatory, okay? And I've had loads of clients who have cancelled their hip or knee surgeries, okay? Firstly, they've lost weight and there's less pressure through that joint.
Yeah.
When I lost my weight, I actually got one of those weight vests and I put it on and I put enough weights on it so that I was back at my original weight. And then I went out for a dog walk. My hips hurt.
Gosh.
My hips hurt.
What a great
Because of the weight that was going through my hips. Now, I know not all of it was carried above my body. Some of it was on my legs. Yeah. But my hips hurt. And so, we're putting a huge amount of stress on our bodies. Yeah. But,
and similar story, I haven't done that, but my 7-year-old, don't know what he weighs, but he's always, Daddy, pick me up. And I shouldn't always pick him up because he's got to do more exercise, but invariably on a long walk, he's on my shoulders. Yeah. And my wife goes, I just don't know how you can do that mile after mile after mile. I said, I don't think I'm carrying as much weight as I did for 30 years.
Yes, absolutely. But the other thing is that ketones are anti-inflammatory. And so people's arthritis and things like that starts to improve, not through the weight. And I know it's not through the weight because people often report to me that their fingers are a lot better, their mobility in their fingers is a lot better when they were on a ketogenic diet. And people are very pleased about that.
Do you want to know a little bit of the science on that?
Go for it.
So if you're overweight, we know you've got a very high chance of fatty liver disease that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. There is an enzyme, and we'll put it up on the screen. I forgot the name of it. I shouldn't have forgot the name of it. I think it's something. There's an enzyme that a fatty liver disease puts out too much of. I can't remember what this enzyme's job normally is, but we always put it out. But when we got fatty liver, we put out more of it, more than the body can hold. And it ends up residing in joints, particularly knee, toes, hips. And this enzyme causes a lot of the inflammation. So fatty liver disease puts this enzyme out. So you've got the extra load of the weight bearing. You've got the fact that you're not into ketogenesis, so you've got no ketones repairing it. You've got this extra, so it's like 3 or 4 things going on that are making all these joints so painful. Yeah,
but it's one of the random things that I hear too often for it to be random.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And people email me all the time, so I run a group program, but I get these messages and they say, I didn't want to post this in the group. My bowels are loads better being this way. Okay, yeah, great, okay. And I've had this weird rash that I've had for years, and doctors have seen it, been to dermatologists about it. It's gone. Yeah. And I'm very careful not to say a ketogenic diet is the treatment for everything. Okay, but it's exciting, it's interesting, and it's certainly worth investigating from my perspective. So,
and then back to this carnivore we're on at the moment. So I said 3 ships a line. I didn't tell you what the third one was. So you said you were going to do it. Mm-hmm. Clara told me about her tomato story. Her tomatoes were killing her, and I thought, well, okay. And she's carnivore. She put me onto a book by Paul Saladino, a great book called The Carnivore Code. I'd already read years ago Sean Baker's book. But anyway, so you two put me onto it. And then we were filming here in the studios with Christian Daly. Christian Daly, ex-international footballer. I think he had something like 40 caps for Scotland. And since then we've written a fitness book together. So ripped, like 49 years old, sits in between our 2 ages. 49 years old, carnivore only. Rip pulls up his t-shirt, 6-pack. I'm not, I want to look like you, mate. He's carnivore, just go carnivore. The weight drops off. But the other thing he said was, I don't know why. He said, but I also don't get burnt in the sun anymore. What do you mean? That can't be right. And then I lay there that night, because I spend a lot of time in Portugal in the summer, and I thought, I can't remember the last time I put on suntan cream in hot weather. And then I thought, but he's carnivore and I'm not carnivore. I'm kind of low carb, ketogenic, somewhere in between there, but I've got the same benefit. Anyway, at the conference last week, somebody went, if you cut out all seed oils, so vegetable oils or all seed oils, and just go to, butter, maybe a bit of olive oil, but mainly butter, lard, anything from an animal, real fats, you don't burn in the sun. Now, I'll caveat that, I'm not guaranteeing this.
Don't try this at home,
this at home. Go gently. Yeah. But we know we need to be out in the sun. And then what they said was, if you went back to the 60s and 70s, people used to put vegetable oil on their skin to get a tan. And they reckon it's the vegetable oils in our skin that cause us to burn when we're out in the sun. And if you go very, very low carb stroke ketogenic and cut out all those oils and just use proper butter and proper fats and lards, drip in and so on, you don't burn.
Really interesting.
So those three ships aligned, and here we are.
And you get vitamin D.
And you get vitamin 2 weeks in.
Yeah, I don't know what they wouldn't. Obviously, we have to be careful about melanoma and things like that.
Yeah.
But
we're not promoting it.
No, absolutely. I mean, but it's just there's so many interesting areas. I mean, look, we've been living this way. We met back 2017, 2018, something like that. We met because we were going to the same personal trainer at the time. We live very close to each other, like I mentioned earlier. We've been on a journey ever since. We've gone the ketogenic journey, and we learned so much about food addiction over the last kind of couple of years, and this is an area that's still very much evolving, and the carnivore things become big in that time, and it's an exciting area that we're discovering and stuff. And so there's still plenty to talk about even and here, and it's still moving on forward. One of the exciting areas that we were talking about before this was mental health illnesses. I'm interviewing somebody next month who is a psychiatrist who recommends carnivore diet. Very, very interesting, isn't it, really? Yeah.
And what I was doing ketogenic and with the carnivore, I measure my ketones every day. And mine naturally sit about 1.2 on the meter. But at the conference I was at last week, they said a therapeutic range. So, if we can get our brain, because I worry about Alzheimer's, my mum's got it. I've got that gene, the APOE4 gene, which makes me 33% more likely to get it, and my mum's got it. So I've got to really be careful that I don't slip into dementia and things like that. And they said the therapeutic range for ketones is 1 to 2. So, but even when this last few weeks, while I've been animal only carnivore, I'm still only just getting into that. So I've started to take a drink now that is ketones in the drink, and that's pushing me up nicely towards the 2 now. And it's so good for clarity. And you were the doctor with us when we did the 0-5-100, where we did 100 miles running over 5 days, no food. So we must have been in ketogenesis. Well, we know we were. And you were with us in May last year when we did the 500 miles on a bike, 5 days, 0 calories. And what did we all have in common? Everybody was saying, God, I'm seeing colours I've never seen before. My hearing's better. My brain's clear. Brain fog's gone. I mean, it's just for the brain, it's just magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, last few weeks, I think this is the thing. I've been feeling really good on the carnivore diet. Is that just because I'm in a high state of ketosis, or is there something special about it? I don't know the answer to that. So it's very, very interesting, all the questions that come out of this. I'm sure some people watching might have an opinion regarding that. But I'm feeling very, very good on it. My need for sleep is less at the moment. We know that people who are on a ketogenic diet sleep better. After the initial phase where they don't sleep better, they get a bit of insomnia. Your brain's changed fuel source. It's likely that things are going to go a little bit awry for a little bit of time, but generally people sleep better. But my sleep requirement, I'm waking up 5 o'clock in the morning, bright as you like. It's great.
It's lovely,
it's really productive time when it's quiet at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're sitting there writing a video for YouTube.
Isn't it interesting? Because we say you must have 7 to 8 hours sleep. But is that really for everybody that's not on the right diet? Does it mean if we're on a really strict diet like we are now, the requirement might be less?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? Exactly. And this is what is normal. Okay. Talk about normal blood sugar range. Okay. And they say 4 is the floor. That's the thing we always teach our diabetics. 4 is the floor. If you're under 4, you've got hypoglycemia. I don't have diabetes. I don't take insulin, but I regularly run below 4.
Same here.
Okay, so what is normal? Is 4 just a normal range for people who are eating a carbohydrate-based diet? Okay, and so I often get people, saying, I checked my blood glucose today and I'm running 3. What is that? What's going on there? That's too low, surely. Well, no, absolutely, because your ketones are fueling your brain. We can't completely remove glucose ethically from the body, so we don't know if there is complete the brain requires any glucose at all. It may entirely run on ketones, but well, you just said the word ethically. I mean, the human requirement to consume carbohydrates and sugar is 0. The way they did some tests on it, basically by injecting people who are not diabetic with insulin to drop their blood glucose levels.
Yeah.
That we can't do ethically.
Oh no, can't do that ethically.
You can't do that ethically.
But I'm saying
that's one of the ways you could test the brain's requirement for glucose.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, there are parts of the body that do need to use glucose.
Yeah,
but then the body turns body fat into glucose as required.
It does. Yeah.
Somebody I was helping with coaching the other week, wearing a continuous glucose monitor, sends me his chart. He said, Steve, I'm strict keto. What do you think that blip was up to 12? I went, banana. He went, nope. I went, oh my God, you didn't have a can of Coke, did you? He went, nope. And I'm going, oh my God. Pasta? Nope. He said, do you want to know what? I go, give up. He starts playing a game of squash.
Of course, yeah.
So the body needed energy because he was bang with squash. He hadn't eaten sugar for months, and bang, massive spike just because it needed it.
Muscle glycogen.
Yeah.
Breakdown. Yeah, I did the same with the 10K race a few years back. Wore a continuous blood glucose monitor, fasted for overnight before, ran without any food, no glucose, strict ketosis. Blood glucose up 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, absolutely. When you need it, you'll create it. And if you're doing intensive exercise enough to break down that glycogen, your body will find that energy.
Yeah. So
especially if you've trained for it.
Just like the Inuits that didn't ever have access to carbs, some of my Maasai friends in Wamba in Kenya and Arusha in Tanzania that I've stayed with, virtually no carbs. The human requirement to come in is 0. But you die eventually if you don't have protein and fat.
Absolutely.
Eventually. So one guy in Scotland, morbidly obese, a couple of decades back, plugged himself in hospital and they went, you're going to die very soon, morbidly obese. He said, I know what I can do. So they put him on a fast. We're going to talk about fasting now. He fasted for over a year in hospital, so it was all under, I'm not suggesting anybody fast for a year, but under medical supervision, didn't have a single calorie coming in for a year. Turned into ketosis, burning his own body fat, lost all the weight, walked out a very healthy man a year later out of hospital. That's an extreme fast. We haven't yet taught fasting. What we've taught so far is about the standard English diet, processed food, too much carbs, moving into a low carb diet, maybe to start off with. Wouldn't recommend, you might try a fast then. Moving into ketogenic, much stricter, definitely cut all the grain out, cut the bread out, cut the potatoes out, cut the rice out. Obviously, there's anything in a package has gone. And then where we are on this experiment at the moment at carnivore. Fasting means going longer periods without food. It could be a 12-hour, 18-hour, a whole day, or our experiments are 5 days, or that one extreme experiment of a year. I don't ever recommend fasting on a regular diet because you're always hungry. So you do it once you go, no, I can't do fast. Friends of mine go, I could never fast. And you're right, you never could fast at the moment. If you're still doing about 150 grams of carb a day and you've just got insulin going up and down a bit, you probably, even on a loosely defined low carb diet, probably couldn't fast. But once we get to ketosis or carnivore, the ketogenic diet or carnivore, fasting just becomes second nature, doesn't it?
Yeah, so if you just obey the rule, don't eat when you're not hungry, it's great. I haven't eaten anything today. My ability to fast is even greater since I've been carnivore. So yeah, really fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And yeah, it's one of the natural things. And some people, I find, they switch into it, find fasting really easy from day one. Okay, and well, I just wake up and nothing. It's absolutely fine. Other people, well, there's a psychological component to it. Well, I must eat. And we've been training our bodies to eat 3 meals a day since childhood. I have a 2-year-old. We give her breakfast, lunch and dinner. Okay? If we didn't give her breakfast and she's a growing child, there'd be problems. Of course. Okay? So she's a growing child. She needs 3 meals a day. But we have this kind of cultural and there's like I say, there's a need for a growing child to be getting loads and loads of good nutrition in to support their growth and development. Of course there is. Does that need to carry on into adulthood? Well, no, it does, because marketing and culture and all these kind of things. But really, it doesn't necessarily need to, does it? But some people find that really difficult to drop. Hang on a second, I can't miss breakfast. I used to be part of the secret no breakfast club, because you couldn't tell people that you didn't eat not eat breakfast. Couldn't discuss it in medical circles that you didn't eat breakfast. It was like a dirty little secret that you didn't eat breakfast. And then you meet someone, I don't eat breakfast either. But I never really wanted to eat breakfast. I did it because I thought that it was the right thing to do. And there's a popular cereal where the advertising is it keeps your hunger locked up till lunch. No, it doesn't.
It's the opposite.
No, it doesn't. Okay? And do you know what? I was like, well, I must not be eating enough. So it's like a massive big pasta bowl, half a box of the stuff in there, and just trudge through it. I'm still hungry by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's still
luckily, the same company also sell you brunch bars.
Yeah, lucky that, isn't it?
Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah. But and probably obese still at that time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I used to. I mean, again, who was it that said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results?
I believe it's attributed to Einstein.
Was it Einstein? So that's what I was doing for 30 years. I was obese for 30 years. And back then the theory was low fat and calorie restriction. So I was doing all that, always hungry, always exercising, so I wasn't lazy. And back then, if I ever missed a breakfast, because we're told to have breakfast and lunch, I'd beat myself up all day. If I was busy and had to go to work straight after my run or something, I'd beat myself up. You mustn't miss breakfast. You mustn't.
Yeah. That's the cause of the problem. We're told was causing the problem, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's bonkers. But there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot of different options. I did promise earlier that I'd tell you what I coach my clients to do. Yeah. So there's some school of thought. And the other thing I didn't mention is with going to a moderate low carbohydrate diet, you tend not to get too many symptoms. In fact, you don't really get anything. It's fine from that perspective. Going to a ketogenic diet, especially if you go rapidly to a ketogenic diet, you do go through a period of adjustment. You're changing a fuel source. Remember that effect that I've talked about, the fluid on the kidneys. We also lose salt, okay? And so we can get headaches, we can get fatigue. We're not used to burning ketones, so we can feel quite fatigued. It takes a while for our bodies to adapt to burning fat. Insomnia, we touched on insomnia, didn't we? Changes in bowel habits. Some people get constipation, other people get diarrhea. But it's the same when you go traveling, isn't it? You go abroad, you start eating different things. Whenever you change your diet, you will have a change in bowel habit. So the question is, do we go slowly or do we go fast? Okay, and manage the symptoms. But what I generally recommend to people is go keto, strict keto, suck up the symptoms. You can manage them by drinking water, electrolytes, bone broth. Electrolyte tablets are really, really convenient. Okay, experience the power. This is what I teach people: is experience the. I want my clients to experience the power of a ketogenic diet. Don't exercise. If you're doing exercise, great, keep exercising. If you're not exercising, don't start now.
No.
Experience the power of diet alone. Because it's absolutely incredible. Experience the change in hunger that you will experience when you go onto a ketogenic diet. Because I don't know about you, but hunger ruled my life. Okay? And to be free from hunger is quite incredible and quite life-changing, to be honest, because you don't eat breakfast, you fall into fasting and you start to become very aware of these kind of things, and you lose weight hand over fist
rapid,
and it's absolutely brilliant. Okay, and so that for me is very motivating. It's not for everybody.
I guess as a doctor you've got to say, if you're on blood pressure tablets, go and see a doctor or buy yourself they're only £20-30 for Boots, or we sell one, a blood pressure monitor, because if you're on medication and now you change your diet, you might very soon not need that medication. So be careful you don't drive your blood pressure too low. Of course, if you're on insulin, probably the wrong medication we're now learning for type 2 diabetics, but if you're on insulin, you will drive down rapidly the need for insulin. So again, don't do that without the advice of your doctor or good monitoring. And then, like you say, embrace it. Understand that ghrelin, the hormone that's telling you you're hungry, as long as you are moving into fat burning mode, you aren't hungry. Every pound of excess body weight is 3,500 calories of food waiting to be tapped into. Ignore it. Relish that feeling of the rumbles, going, I know what you want me to do, but I'm not doing it. Call him the gremlin, not ghrelin. There's a gremlin going to eat, because that's what we're wired to do as humans, Eat, and you go, no, I'm not. I'm going to fight you and I'll let you, because you're not real. It'll go away in a half hour.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes in waves. It comes in waves. So yeah, ketogenic diet. And then once you've experienced the power of that and lost some weight, then you've got a choice, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay, where do you want to go next, all right?
Yeah.
Is a ketogenic diet too strict for you?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is for some people, like I've said. Okay,
Yeah.
in that case, we can start to moderate that a little bit. You might enjoy some of the variety. Your weight loss might slow down,
Yeah.
but you can always go back.
Yeah.
You can always go back to it.
Yeah.
Remember, it's all about experimentation, personal experimentation. It's
Exactly.
great. Okay, or you might choose to stay strictly keto, and that's great. You might enjoy that for a while. You might intend to go. You might even decide to go even more strict and try a carnivore diet, and that's only something I've recently been, thinking about advising people really, because, I'm seeing the power of it myself, and it's certainly not a right choice for everybody because it is extremely restrictive and very difficult on your social life.
Yes.
When you go out, it's, even a ketogenic diet's doable.
Yeah.
A moderate low carbohydrate diet is much easier when you go
In a
out
restaurant.
eating. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Other than you say to them, and I always do this, by the way, now, and I have not yet found a restaurant that won't do it. I go in, I'm intolerant, I have an allergy to vegetable oils. Can you ask them to cook my steak in butter? And as soon as you say you've got an allergy, they panic about anything, and you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
Because I don't want vegetable oils on any of my food. So go and cook whatever you're cooking me. Please ask the chef. You'll have butter. Every restaurant's got butter. Please cook it all in butter for me. Or if you've got olive oil, that'll do. But do not put vegetable oils on. That's
you need a little card made up for that, so you can just hand it over.
That's a good idea. Let's do that. Let's make one. Let's make one.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, isn't it? That's the interesting thing. We're both experimenting with carnivore, and it is quite restrictive. I was at a really nice restaurant for my daughter's 15th birthday the other day in London. Really nice restaurant. And it was hard, but I love duck and pancakes. That's one of my areas I do break the rules. But it was so easy to just have the duck on its own without any of the greens of the duck, and then a meat cut dish come out, and I was kind of scraping off any sauces, so I just had the meat. It's doable, but harder. Yeah. And I think, I don't know how long you're going to carry on with your experiment. I'm going to go to the end of 5 weeks, and then I might keep reverting back to that when I'm eating at home, because it's so easy to get steak, eggs, bit of cheese. It's easy. Yeah. But everybody's got different circumstances, haven't they? Because of my life where I've got kids of different ages, there's an hour difference in the morning when they go to school. Because after school clubs, there's a 3 or 4 hour thing there. So we don't have such thing, other than on holidays, which is very different. We don't have a thing where we all sit down together. We just don't. Even on weekends we don't, sadly, because one's at drama school, one's at football, one's at something else. So our family doesn't have that traditional sit down thing. Yeah. So I'm not forced at home to have what the kids are having. Somebody else cooks for the kids, not me. But it's good food most of the time. But we're not over strict, because again, that will have a negative effect. If you're over strict, they'll eventually hate it and then go back to Kellogg's. So if they want Kellogg's one morning, the young kids, when they're grown, it's not so bad. But we try and get them to have egg and bacon. But so at home, it's easy for me. But what I might do moving forward, and I'd love to get what your plans are, because it is so powerful, and I do feel so good, and I am really getting to where I want to be weight-wise. I think at home I'm going to stay carnivore, but then out in the restaurants, which is 2 or 3 times a week, back to quite strict keto, I think.
Well, this is the thing. You can try. This is the beauty of it. It's not fixed, is it? Yeah. It's not fixed. Yeah. It's just a little experiment that you run for a little while, and you see what the results are, and if that works for you, that's great. Yeah. And and that's the lovely thing about it. You can switch between these modalities. You could be switched strict carnivore and say, hang on a second, it's much easier when I eat out to go for just a moderate low carb meal, really. And if that aligns with your goals and what you want to achieve at that individual time, then that's great. And this is what we're talking about, isn't it? Because we've talked about, and the first day at medical school, you get taught 2 things. The first thing is, you will probably kill someone in your career. If you can't deal with that, get out now. Okay, it's very, very true. The second thing is, you should really consider all disease as biological, psychological, and social. Okay, and so that's what I really think of helping people with obesity, helping people with their diets. We have to consider not only the biological, but we have to consider the social aspects and the way it integrates with people's lives and how it integrates with the psychology of how people work. We've talked about all this today, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've talked about the biology, switching from the energy-based model to the carbohydrate insulin model, a lower carbohydrate diet. Well, that addresses the biology, okay? And that's exactly what I used to teach people when I first started my program, was the biology. Yeah. And then I wondered why some people didn't get results, okay? Because it's not just about biology, is it? We can't just think about it. You talk about your family situation, how it integrates with your family situation. Are you someone who works away from home a lot? Are you staying away from home, having to deal with, if you're a truck driver, every stop you encounter, there's a Greggs or a pasty shop or something like that. That impacts on everything as well. Now, you might have a partner at home. Are they supportive of you? Okay, because it's great if they are, but not every partner is. And I often get people coming in, well, I'm doing this with my partner, we're watching the videos together, it's great, we're cooking together, we're eating together, our teenage daughter's even eating some of the meals, it's fantastic. And then you've got the other people, and it's usually it's very often the husband of the wife who has always been stick thin. They've never had weight issues in their life, and they're like, Dr. Mags is an idiot. Okay, Dr. Mags is an idiot, and they're actively sabotaging. Okay, they're bringing in food at home. Okay, and so not everybody's lucky enough to have a supportive partner at home. Does that mean that they shouldn't achieve their weight loss goals if they want to lose weight? No. Okay, it just means we need to support them in a different way. So we must do that. Okay, we must address the social environment in which we live. Okay, but also psychological. Okay, I'm a sugar addict. I can't touch this stuff. I would be the one who goes down that rabbit hole. Okay, of sugar. Okay, and we know that people have sugar addictions and food addictions and stuff, and we have to address those. So we cover it really early on in my program is sugar addiction, because it's one of the biggest things that derails people. Okay, and addiction is a real thing that can be addressed and treated. The first thing to do is get abstinence from the substance. And if that substance is sugar, then you need to stay away from sugar, okay? And have that as a rule for yourself. Stay away from sugar, because...
And in your circle, there has been this debate raging ever since I've been in this space. Is addiction to food real? I've just come back from that conference. The first whole day was about sugar addiction. It's a fact now. It is an addiction. It is a worse addiction in many ways than smoking and alcohol and other things. If you're addicted to heroin, the answer in some ways is simple: give up. If you're addicted to alcohol, give up. If you're addicted to smoking, give up. Can't give up food forever.
No, you can't. Absolutely.
So now you've got to learn about which foods are feeding your addiction.
Yeah, and you've got to struggle, and sometimes it's a struggle to get away from those kind of things. So I went, just for example, obviously I'm strict carnivore at the moment, and I was out working. I work as a mobile GP, and we were out and about. So I went into the supermarket, went to the hot food counter. Right, which is the plainest chicken I can find off the hot food counter? Salt and pepper wings. Okay, I'll have a few of those. I'm going to eat later. I'll have a few of those. Get them out to the car, look at the packet. Chicken, salt, pepper, sugar. You're like, why? Because they need to put sugar on this. And it's like everywhere we turn, it's a battle, really. Why do they need to put sugar on?
They're feeding your addiction. They're feeding your addiction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why do McDonald's fries have sugar on? You don't put sugar on chips. They do.
No,
they put
fun.
sugar on to feed that addiction. No wonder my daughter loves the McDonald's chips, because they're feeding an addiction.
It's bonkers, isn't it? It's absolutely ridiculous. So it's a fight. It's a fight. What we're doing here is countercultural. Okay, and some people are great. They go off and they do that on their own. Other people need more support. Okay, and that is what we do is support people, really. But we must consider it as a holistic kind of thing. We have to see a person as a whole. We're not all the same. We all have different backgrounds. We all have starting points. We all have different infinitely complex lives. That's what makes medicine so interesting, okay? That's why we say as doctors, there's no 2 days are ever the same, because that is the rich spectrum of life. And it's exciting and it's interesting.
It's really exciting. Before I ask you my final question, which I always do, let's just reconfirm what we've said. Standard diet with fake foods, they're not even real foods, they're just fake foods, food-like substances in packets, forget, everybody knows that. The common weight loss program of reducing calories in and expending more, the Weight Watchers Slimming World, we know it's flawed, and I think you said it's like it works maybe for 1 in 500 people. 1 in 150 people might pull it off sustainably, but it's miserable for most because you're always hungry. And then we proposed 3 different plans, going low carb, varying, keep pushing down your carbs, and then when you really push it down and get rid of all the bread, the pasta, the rice, carnivore, which is where we live most of the time.
Keto.
Sorry,
keto.
Missed that. Keto. Ketosis, a ketone, a diet, a ketogenic diet is where we live most of the time. And then if you really want to do the ultimate elimination diet to see if there's something in there that, because nobody, by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you go carnivore, we call it elimination diet because we don't think there's hardly anybody that's allergic to meat. Otherwise we wouldn't be here as a species. So you're going down to the one thing that nobody's really allergic to. If you're not allergic to eggs, because eggs are from an animal, you can put that into your carnivore. If you want to put a little bit of cheese in and you're not allergic to cheese, now you're carnivore with some nice, nice meals, but you've eliminated all the veg, all the nuts, all the seeds, proper elimination. And then if you want to, we can start adding things back in to see if something causes a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't have to stick.
Yes.
We can move freely between these different modalities, even on a daily basis, if we so choose, if it aligns with our goals.
But not, as you said, don't push it too far down the spectrum this way to the strict one. If you're then constantly binging back, go back up the line to one that you can hold more regularly. One exception for me, by the way. So we're both coming off this, well, I'm planning to come off the day we go skiing together, which is about another 3 weeks. And what's going to be interesting...
Not that we won't eat meat while we're skiing.
Well, we will eat lots of meat. But I'm going to talk about one exception in a second. So we've both done this. My best mate Dave's done it. My son Matt's on it. And Jake, on and off, he's had some problem with gout. So there's out of the 6 of us going skiing, 5 of us have all done this carnivore January. So we should do a load of biological markers and see where we're all at before we have our first meal out there. You can't go to Switzerland, or I can't, without having a cheese fondue. And the first time I went, you thought I was a bit mad because I took into the restaurant a cauliflower and I said, cook the cauliflower so I can dip the cauliflower into the cheese, which is a bit extreme. But I think I might be naughty this time because I'm talking to cauliflower. I love you. COVID first time round, I was really poorly with COVID and I heard a ring on the doorbell and I went down and there was nobody about and there was just 2 cauliflowers on my doorstep that you dropped.
Biggest cauliflowers I've ever seen. Huge. I think they'd been sitting in the fields because nobody had been harvesting them. But because I was out and about. I was doing my mobile doctoring stuff. It was.
You dropped me off those 2 cauliflowers. But I'm not going to do the cauliflower and the cheese. I'm just going till I've had 5 weeks, super strict, one day only. I'm going to put a little bit of bread in my cheese. But that's the power of living down in either the ketogenic or the carnivore one for a long time. Just one day shouldn't make a difference. As long as it doesn't trigger an emotion and goes, I actually like that, I'll do it again the next day.
Absolutely.
As long as I can get back there straight away.
It's where, you have your birthday party or whatever and you say, hang on a second, we have Christmas, we've just come out of Christmas and stuff. It's those people that, the sweets and the candies or whatever at Christmas time triggers that brain to go, hang on a second, bum. Okay, that's where things become really, really difficult, isn't it? So that's addiction.
That is addiction. And also, once you've been down there for a while, so Christmas Day, I've never pulled off, because my family aren't all low carb, my kids are growing, my wife is one of those lucky people, her metabolism, or whatever it is, she can eat anything and she's slender, although she has got a thyroid problem, which could be to do with, well, let's leave that for now. But I cooked some roasties, and I cooked them in goose fat, and they came out, my roast potatoes normally have never come out good on Christmas Day. They came out great. And I thought, I'm going to have a couple because they look so good. And I had a couple, but I felt terrible in the evening. Terrible. Everything else on my plate was ketogenic other than that, and I felt terrible. So once you get used to it, sometimes your body then just doesn't want it. Anyway, same question I'll ask everybody. It's not loaded, even though we've just had that conversation. Dr. Dan Maggs, 3 tips only to healthy longevity.
I've said this one before, because I have to say it because it's still so common.
Doesn't matter.
Stop smoking if you're a smoker, because honestly, it's still a very prevalent thing to do. Clearly, I am a big believer in the low carbohydrate diet thing, but I'm not going to surprise you. So we've already talked about that. I'm not going to talk about that, but try and get to a lifestyle where you don't need an alarm to wake up in the morning.
Nice, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because that's really nice.
Yeah.
Okay? And it means you're getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Okay? And if we've all got different sources of stress in our lives. Okay? There are ways of dealing with those stresses. You need to deal with those stresses in order to kind of live a happy life. Okay? Yeah. And so work on your stresses and so that's it. Stop smoking if you're a smoker.
Go low carb.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But
eat real food.
Yeah, sleep well and stress less. I mean, that's what's really often what we talk about. There's not a lot more than that.
It's great, isn't it?
Change what you eat. Change when you eat.
Yeah.
Reduce your stress. Reduce your toxins. Yeah. The fundamentals of lifestyle medicine, really.
Yeah. I set an alarm because I have to take my daughter to the train station every morning. But my aim is to wake up before it goes off. Because if I wake up before it goes off, I've had enough sleep. Yeah. If it wakes me up, then I can't have had enough sleep when I get up.
Exactly. So by all means, aim to not have an alarm, but I still have an alarm as a backup. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Thanks,
see you on the ski slopes.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be getting up and down on those skis much easier than we've done in years before.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be good. You're going to have to adjust those bindings, get the rates right.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Steve.